Hey, ladies and gentlemen, I clicked on the wrong button there. So I was talking to Emerson about all the wonderful things about walnuts and things like that. But we'll be right back right after this brief message. E360 TV proudly presents messages of inspirational stories. Live streaming now to millions of devices, including Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, Android TV, YouTube Live, Facebook Live, with your host, Donna Guinois, producer and host, Jim Grant, producer and host, along with Michaela Vidal, administrator and host, and Gaia Guinois Balconi Wada, editor-in-chief. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I pushed the wrong button right out of the gate, and it's all Emerson's fault. I can't take credit for that. He was telling me, because let me first just set the scene by saying today is National what they call Grab Your Nuts Day. And they were talking about walnuts and pecans and all that. It says here in the history that 10,000 BC, I don't know, or 10 million BC. They got 1, 2, 3, 4 zeros behind that 10. I haven't seen, that must be some new math. But anyway, it says walnuts are the first tree to be consumed. Our first nuts to be consumed.
I was going to say, and then they realized that the nuts were better than the tree.
Yeah, and they got it listed as tree food. I'm sorry, folks. Yeah, I mean that when you hear what Emerson told me, if you love walnuts, and we'll get there. Okay, this was interesting. In 1890, there was a dentist or a doctor, excuse me, in St. Louis who actually invented peanut butter. And the reason why he prescribed this to patients to brush their teeth with it who had bad teeth. That kind of really, took me back there a little bit. I've never thought of using, peanut butter to brush my teeth.
Although doggy toothpaste is peanut butter flavored.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Maybe we're missing out on something
I know.
here. And in 1919, Texas adopts the pecan tree as its state tree. I did not know that. I live here in Texas. I would have guessed the oaks or something, or an oak tree. And in 2019,
there are heavy fines.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as protecting the pecan industry in Texas, I could tell you.
Oh,
that. And I lived part of my life in South Georgia, and pecan groves are all over the place there. And you notice I still call it a pecan, and my darling wife corrects me every time and says, "No, that's something that you keep on the boat."
Yeah, you might need going down the road in the car a little. Okay.
But it's if you drive through the South, you'll go through just field or grove after grove of pecan trees, and it's just they're beautiful. Yeah. I love it.
Same is true out in Arizona, down in Cochise County. There's a lot of pecan grove down there, and Cochise County is for those of you that may not be familiar with Arizona, it's on the southeastern corner of the state. It is where Tombstone is, Bisbee, Sierra Vista, Benson. Wilcox is one of the other, and Douglas, of course, excuse me. But Tombstone, Arizona, that's where, the Wild West really began, all the movies and all that. So, and Cochise County is a very beautiful county. It really is. And April the 2019th, Nuts, A Global History is released on Amazon. But, what really got me going there, before the show began, it got me confused. Emerson asked me if I'd ever go ahead and tell him about that. About the walnuts and in the jar.
Yeah, one of the things my mother always loved, and by the way, my mother would have been 100 years old here in 2 days if she were alive. but she always loved to buy these little jars of walnuts in syrup, and she would put that over her ice cream, and it is so good. And if you next time you're on the ice cream aisle and you're looking there at the different syrups and things that they have, check it out, because they still make it, and it is good. Yeah. It is good. Little teeny jars about that big.
And it's time for us to go live, and he's telling me this story, so I'm all in, I'm all in peak walnut and syrup land, and I pushed the wrong button. So that's how, like I said, it was his fault there. But Emerson, we were talking earlier. Emerson asked me, he says, "Do you like black walnuts?" And the answer was, "Yeah, I love them." And I says, I remember, I think it was Baskin Robbins used to carry a black walnut ice cream. And every time I went in there, now this is back in the early 70s. Every time I went in there, that was the ice cream that I asked for. Black walnut ice cream. Oh my goodness. And
if I'm not mistaken, a black walnut is not directly related to a regular walnut either. It's a whole different nut.
I didn't know that.
It has a really strong flavor.
Oh,
make your fingers in all black if you're breaking them and eating them. Yeah, but they really have a very unique flavor. Very good.
Yeah. Oh, I love them. I love them. I really do. As a kid, I just fell in love with black walnuts. And Emerson, today is also National Watermelon Day.
Hey.
Oh. In the summertime, growing up, we used to raise watermelons there on the farm, and we had a little patch. We weren't doing it commercially or anything. It was just for our own consumption.
Watermelon patch.
Yeah, and well, we go down there and get those watermelons, and we thump them. Thump, thump, thump.
Yep.
I don't know where the thumping came in, but we were all expert thumpers.
Well, they start separating inside a little bit, and when you thump it and it's right,
get that hollow. Yeah.
You get that little hollow sound.
Yeah, and when you would put a knife into the side of it to open it, it automatically starts splitting too.
Yeah,
that's when you got a ripe melon. And the watermelons that you get commercially through the supply line, it's like anything else. It's just not as fresh as coming straight out of the farm field. There's just no comparison to that.
Yeah, we're fortunate here. There's they grow quite a few of them around here, and you'll have farmers will bring their own trucks in.
Yeah.
To the farmers market and all, and can still get some pretty good freshness. But you're right, many of them come in from Central America, from other Mexico, other places, and they're picked before they're completely ripe. So it's not quite the same. But here's the big question, the universal question, Jim. This is for everybody out there, okay? Because our audience, I've been in marketing my entire life, and I can tell you, demographically, this is a huge, huge, huge division in our audience. Do you salt or not salt?
As a kid, I salted.
Our audience on that line. I can tell you that.
Yeah, that's a good one, because as a kid, putting salt on a watermelon, that just really, and some people probably don't, I guess, and some people would probably, for health reasons, not want to use salt. And
well, I tell you what, it's as big of a market and demographic divider as, do you put ketchup on a hot dog or not?
Wow.
Some people say, you put mustard on a hot dog. You don't put ketchup on a hot dog. What are you doing putting ketchup on a hot dog?
Boy, this show really does teach you. You learn a lot. We figure we'll share information out there to you folks in TV land, but I'm telling you, we go to school here too. Because when I ate hot dogs, I'd put ketchup and mustard on it.
Okay, here's another one for you. A great divider. And this is in a lot of the marketing I've done. I've done it nationally, I've done it internationally, and locally. But how many of you watching use mayonnaise when you have French fries? It's a very European thing.
Okay,
Very European to
yeah.
dip it in mayonnaise. Yeah.
Never tried that.
Well,
Never tried that.
It's not my favorite, but I've I learned that from a very good Dutch friend that I had in college, and I thought it was really strange. But when you go over, if you go and buy fish and chips in Europe, they'll have mayonnaise sitting there.
Oh yeah,
to go with it.
So. Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's kind of funny. Growing up in the South, grits was a staple for breakfast,
and sometimes lunch or dinner. Yeah.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. And I remember when I was in the service, I'm driving across country, and I get out there because I'm going to Fort Huachuca, Arizona. When I came back from Vietnam, they sent me to Fort Huachuca, Arizona in 1970. And I was so dumb, ladies and gentlemen. I thought it was in Arizona. I thought it was Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, then California. I didn't know they had it, that I had it reversed in my mind, but I did. And I also learned something that growing up in in Shelby, North Carolina, in the public school system, they did not teach us that you pronounce an H with a W. Huachuca is spelled Huachuca.
In Spanish, yeah.
Yeah, and they pronounce the word with a W, Huachuca. Because the first time I stopped out there in Wilcox, Arizona, and I asked this guy, I says, do you know where he said, Fort Huachuca? And I said, how did you say that again? But my point being, getting back to my story, I'm riding out across West Texas there, on Interstate 20 coming across. And I stopped for the night, and I get up next morning, walk into this little, cafe, and I'm looking. I said, you have any grits? And the lady looks at me and says, what's grits? And I thought, you got to be kidding me. What's grits? I thought that was everywhere. And that's the way it is in our world when we're growing up. We think that what's going on in our life or what we experience in our life is everywhere.
Okay, and this is a little of the reverse of that.
Yeah, okay.
My first wife was from Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And we were in school in Tallahassee. Just recently met and we're seeing each other, and I took her out to breakfast one morning at Howard Johnson's. I mean, this was a nice breakfast, okay? So I took her out to breakfast, and the waitress says, he's taking the order, says, well, what would you like with that, ma'am? Hash browns or grits? She goes, oh, I don't know. I guess hash browns. I said, oh, you've got to try their grits. They actually have really good grits here. I mean, they cook them for like 4 hours and butter. I don't know. I'm not really sure. Could I try one? If I'm lying, I'm dying, Jim. If I'm lying, I'm dying. This waitress was so deadpan. She goes, no problem. One grit for the lady. And then she brought out a little saucer with one grit in the middle of it. She said, ma'am, if you like that one, I'll get you another.
Yeah. For those of you out in TV land that may not understand what grits are, grits is similar to oatmeal, except it's much more finer than that. Cream of wheat is a good comparison.
Well, our cream of wheat or something.
Cream of wheat's a good comparison.
It's made from hominy corn.
Yeah.
And it's been crushed. And I actually grew up with large grain grits, which wasn't finely ground. But another thing that here's another great divider, Jim. to sweeten or not sweeten. I grew up with grits that you ate them like rice or potatoes or anything else. And with butter, maybe. Some people put a little salt, but for me, just some butter on it and creamy and everything else. People want to add sugar to it or syrup or do things and treat it like it's oatmeal or like it's cream of wheat or something.
Yeah. Yeah. We growing up, we put butter on it we put sugar on it. And the winter time, this was a treat for us. We would put the butter on there, but we would put some homemade molasses on there, just a little bit, and mix it in there.
Yeah. Molasses or cane syrup. I grew up with cane syrup more. Yeah.
It's amazing taking a trip here down memory lane. And we talk about how to survive. I got to also mention our sponsors. Our show is brought to you by The 7 Levels of Truth, a book by Mr. Bill Heinrich. And we are also brought to you by the Hometown Good News magazine. It's a new magazine. It's coming up, and they're getting their website up, and we're just very, very honored to be a part of that. We have articles that will be, we have been requested to have articles in the magazine, and the magazine will be coming out. And Marty Haggard's in there. His story, I had the honor and the privilege, Emerson, the honor and the privilege of me as being Marty's friend to write an article about Marty Haggard's story and it being in the first issue. And I'm just real excited about that, brother. That's quite an honor.
It is.
Yeah.
He's a nice guy. He and his wife.
Yes, he is.
Both are just really down to earth people.
Oh, him and Tessa, they are, the salt of the earth kind of people. And because Marty is the oldest son of Merle Haggard, he traveled with his dad when he was making all that great music. And, you would think that he would be, a little, what's the word I'm looking for? But he's just totally opposite. He's just down to earth.
Yeah.
Realistic. He's just a simple, honest man. That he's a Jesus freak, as he describes himself. And his wife, Tessa, is not only a beautiful lady on the outside, she's doubly beautiful on the inside. Very sweet, down to earth, simple folks. They're the kind of folks that it's an honor to be their friend, isn't it, Emerson?
Yeah. Yeah. It was
and
really good spending that time.
We gotta share another wonderful thing about that you filmed this on your cell phone about Marty. And I just turned around, and I'm gonna let you tell the story because you saw him, and you please share that with them.
Well, yeah, many of the people who were there at the concert had been to multiple concerts that he had done there in Tomball and other places. They come back again and again because they love the stories, the singing. They love all of that, and they love his personality. And so when it was over, there was a line, and Marty waits until the last person's gone. There was a line of people just to thank him, have their picture taken with him or whatever. And there was this one elderly lady in a wheelchair, and her family had brought her to see him. And Marty literally, he leaned over, and then finally he got down on one knee, and he was talking with her for a good 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Just him and her. Him and her. And there was a line of people waiting to see him. And you know what? One of the other beautiful parts of that, Jim, and it doesn't show in that picture, that picture is a beautiful picture. You're right.
Right.
And it was a beautiful moment. But what was equally beautiful for me is I look back at the line. You didn't see anybody who was getting upset or anxious.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
They were just standing there. They were okay. They were okay. And they knew that when they got up there that he would spend time with them and give them direct attention too. So it was just a neat moment.
It really was, because I saw you there, and I saw you, video filming him on the camera there, recording it on the camera, I should say. And Marty was just totally, no one else mattered on planet Earth.
There's nobody else in the room, just him and her.
This dear elderly lady, and she was talking to him. And Marty's body language, ladies and gentlemen, not only was he down on one knee, but as the lady was talking, he tilted his head and leaned forward and looked her straight in the eye.
Yep.
And listened to every word she had to say.
And he didn't appear rushed or bothered.
No.
By anything else. It was just him and her at that moment.
Yeah.
And he wasn't rushing it. And everybody in that line, when I look back, seemed to get it. They seemed to get it. That okay, you know what?
Yeah.
I'll have my chance, and this is fine. My first my first mother-in-law was Hispanic, and she usually would say this when I was driving too fast, but I don't think a day has gone by that I haven't thought of this phrase, which is "hay más tiempo que vida," which means basically we have more time than we have life.
I bet you heard that a lot by knowing you.
We have more time than life. And you know what? But it's true. It's true. It's true beyond just that. It's true when we get rushed, when we get anxious, when we get walking in fear, when we're listening to all of the negative news, when we're seeing the things going on and not sure and worried, and you know, to step back and go, you know what? We have more time than we have life. Yes. Let the person ahead of you in the traffic. Let the person go through the checkout line in front of you.
Yes.
It's okay. It's not gonna destroy, your important schedule so much. There's more time than there is life.
Yeah.
And it's so amazing when you begin to I've seen in myself, is you begin to practice that or think about that. A lot of the frustrations and anxieties and everything else drop down because it's a reality check.
Yes, it's
a reality check.
And I've seen some of these videos. I don't watch them, but sometimes they pop up, road rage and all that. Most of the time, the discourteous person is the one that creates that. Rather than give a person a chance to merge into traffic. No, I'm here and I'm taking this spot. And then they call him, look at this guy over here. It's his fault. No, it isn't. The law is based on the proximate cause of the problem. The problem with that kind of an attitude, it just reaches inside you and it rips all of your good energy and all the blessings that you're entitled to receive out of you, because you chose to replace that, or force it out, I should say, by having a bad attitude and by, putting yourself first. Every time you put yourself first, you all automatically wind up at the end of the line. That's just a universal law. It's a principle. And before the show, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about how you can survive inflation. We're going to talk a little bit about our attitude here. And you brought up a story I had forgot about. It's in the Old Testament, the story of Moses. And I'd like you to share that a little bit. Let's listen to this.
It's so easy to look around and I'm not a person who says, I stopped taking the paper and I don't watch any of the news and this and that and the other. It's all negative. And that's one approach, just to avoid it all. But to me, another approach is to step back and look at what you have in your hand, what you have available to you. Gratitude list, if you want to think of it that way.
Amen.
But to look at everything in your life and be willing to open up to the potential and what you have and what you can work with. In the story that I was sharing with Jim, which I've shared on stage
many
all
times.
Over the country. Yeah, many times. Moses was an old guy, and he had run away from Egypt, where he was a prince. And we've all seen the movie and everything else. So he's up in the mountains with his sheep, or goats. I think it was sheep, but he's up in the mountains. He's old. He smells. He's been living out here with these sheep. And he sees the bush burning and he goes over to it, and God speaks to him out of the bush. Says, Moses, I want you to go down to Egypt and tell Pharaoh, let my people go. Now, we've all seen the movie or read it.
Yeah.
But this was the thing that stood out the most to me. Moses stuttered. He's an old guy. He stunk. He's been talking to sheep for 40 years or however long. Okay. And he starts arguing with God. You got it wrong. I mean, it's like, listen, you did a lot of things right. Some things, like, I'm not going to mention the seeds and avocados. They're a little too big, but let's talk about serious stuff here. I'm not your guy. And he's just going on and on about this. God listens for a minute or two. And then this is so powerful. This is so powerful. All he says to him is, "What's that in your hand?" And it was his staff, his shepherd's staff.
Mm-hmm.
Look around you. What's in your hand? What do you have? Mm-hmm. Look at what you have left, not what you have lost.
Mm-hmm.
Look at what you've got to work with, not all the reasons why it won't work.
Yes.
God says, throw it down. Of course, it turned into a snake. I haven't figured out how to do that part yet. But anyway, throw it down. So the story here that really jumped it out at me when the first time that I really read it and saw this was God's said, "What's in your hand?" Start with what's in your hand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't have control over everything going on in Washington or in the legislature, or some guy cut me off in traffic, or whatever.
Or the prices at the pump, or the shortages at the grocery store.
Yeah, the economy. If I'm able to find the watermelons, or not, because of supply chains, but I do have the things around me.
Mm-hmm.
I have the ability in here to look at things differently. You have the ability to change your world, to change it, and you have everything you need to do that.
Amen.
And that's the message in there. And in this time, going back to the topics, the topic that we're on, dealing with and living with the new normal that we're in, and whatever that wherever it goes, we don't have any control over any of those things. But you have things in your life right now, talents and skills and resources and people and knowledge and experience and things that by just taking what you got and adapting it a bit, you can do more than just survive. You can thrive.
Amen.
And your family can thrive. And the life that we will have a year or 2 or 3 or 4 from now, who knows what it will be like. But we have the ability to guide that path depending on, do we look at everything we've lost or everything we have left? Are we seeing things through the eyes of possibility? Are we seeing of abundance? Or seeing it through the eyes of lack?
Yeah, that's exactly it. You hit the nail on the head. Like one of the things that I did it this morning, I'm proud to say, but I don't do it all as often as I should, ladies and gentlemen. Let me be very clear on that. But I woke up this morning and I thank God for the heartbeat in my veins and the breath in my lungs and for this day. Those are the 3 things that money can't buy. All 3 of those are gifts. So, when you start counting your blessings, I've never done this before, but I mean, you might want to take a piece of paper and write down all the things that you think are, shortcomings in your life, that all the things where life has stacked the deck against you. And then on the other side, be honest with yourself and then list your blessings. The little things in life that are really the big things. You may not ever think about the heartbeat in your veins being being a gift, but it really is.
And I'll go a step further. Most of us don't even need to write down all of our shortcomings.
There you go.
Because we have voices in our head telling us all those shortcomings 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
That's how our brain is wired. It's constantly, it never stops.
Mm-hmm.
And familiarity breeds contempt. The person that
Yeah.
you're most familiar with is yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start changing that perspective, your perspective is your reality. You change that perspective and start looking at all the possibilities and all of the assets that you've got, all the things in your hand, the people that you know, the connections that you have, the knowledge that you have, the experience that you have. And folks, this doesn't, there are people who are watching right now who say, yeah, but I'm just of this and I'm just of that, and I've never, and I never had more than this education, and I've never this that, yeah, and that's that voice of lack. Take those words like justa. There ain't no justa. There's only one of you. And the things that you're able to do for yourself and your family and your community and your world, there's nobody else who has your particular DNA, your particular talents and skills, your particular understanding and outlook. Nobody's had the experiences that you've got. Nobody has the understanding that you've got. Nobody's been smacked down and had to get up again in the ways that you have. And so it's powerful. You are powerful beyond measure.
Yes, you are.
And it's this kind of leads into the other thing that I mentioned, Jim, the great story, Acres of Diamonds. Okay.
Yeah. Before you do, I just want to say also, look at your thumbprint.
Oh yeah.
That's a wonderful way for the creator to prove how smart he is, how unique he is, and how special you are, because nobody on planet Earth has ever had or will ever have your thumbprint. As the old saying goes, just remember, you are somebody. Yeah. But it just goes to show you how uniquely created that you are with all your individual gifts and talents. And that's one of the things that Bill Heinrich covers in his books, The 7 Levels of Truth, how no one has all the gifts that you have.
Yeah.
Some people may have more gifts in one area. You got more gifts in another area. But before we get into the Acres of Diamonds, I'd like to say, look back at 2020. When the pandemic first hit, and the bad news just erupted like a volcano on us. And listen, just think back of all the things that you heard, the things that worried you, the things that even scared a lot of people. I mean, a lot of people were scared to death. I mean, there were people that were thinking, and even I thought, my goodness, because I didn't know anything about it like everybody else. I thought, are we going to be walking down the street and just see people just drop like flies? I mean, there was all kind of negative stuff. And of course, we were all home. Were there for a while. And as I said in a previous show, I don't know who the Einstein was that came up. When there's a shortage, the first thing you want to make sure you got is toilet paper. I would put beanie weenies on the list. But think back from 2020.
First, the beanie weenies or the need for the toilet paper. Right?
Yeah. But I mean, I don't know why that became such a big issue. I mean, it's the first thing it was cleaned out of the shelves. But my point being, think back about 2020 and to now. All the things that you heard, all the train wrecks that were coming, did they really come and happen to you? Sure, a lot of people got COVID. Emerson and his wife got COVID.
I lost a son-in-law to it.
Yes.
I lost a client to it.
Yes. So it was a real deal. But the thing of it was, if you're still here, that means COVID did not take you out. I'm not saying it can't. Don't misunderstand me. I'm just saying, we were all concerned, I mean, the joke was, some guy was in a supermarket and he sneezed and everybody else ran out of the store, But that was about the thinking, the mentality of that day and time. But look how, things changed very, very dramatically. People started working at home. People were out of work. Look how people survived that. So surviving inflation We're going to survive it. We just got to be smarter about how we spend our money. We got to, in fact, if you cook at home and cook in bulk, as Donna was talking about yesterday,
Yeah.
You can freeze stuff and the leftovers, you can stagger the leftovers over a period of time to where you may have this leftover tonight, tomorrow night, we'll have this another type of leftover where it doesn't become old and stale. But the fact of it is you can save money like that.
Oh, sure. And honestly, we have a little thing where we love taking the leftovers from, because we do most of our own meals, like 99% of what we make ourselves here at home. And the thing is, we'll make a beautiful dinner, but we'll already be thinking about how we're going to use that in the breakfast in the morning, and things like that, because it can become fun. It's not like, oh, leftovers again. It's it's thinking creatively with it. And also when you cook, another good thing that you can do is to make more than what you're going to need and freeze it.
Yes.
And have it.
Yeah.
And now you have variety that's sitting there that you can pull out when you are in a time crunch.
Exactly.
And that also much when you're doing it yourself. Yes, it takes time. But it's also, we call it playtime. We play in the kitchen together. It's being creative and sniffing and tasting and chopping and making the stuff. And it's an activity that we're doing together. And it's not the chore. And you know what? Every one of us has the same 24 hours in a day.
Yeah. And time is money. So, another nice thing too, we haven't talked about this, but when you're preparing your food at home, you're able to pick and choose what you and or your family will eat. And if you're eating healthier, that will also in the long term help reduce doctor bills and, over-the-counter prescriptions and things of this nature. I'm not saying it will eliminate it. I'm just saying the healthier you are and you give your body good food for the immune system and to be healthy, the better chances you are of reducing the amount of times you get sick and need over-the-counter prescriptions or need to go see the doctor.
It's hard for me often to eat out because it's so often, and we'll go out to eat and enjoy it, but it's so often it's oversalted, overseasoned, greasy, and I'm not talking about eating it at greasy spoons necessarily. I'm talking about just in terms of comparing it to the way that we cook. We cook with very little, oil. We'll use very little salt. In the season, we use a lot of different seasonings, but we get seasonings. We order the seasoning so that we don't have the salt in the seasoning. That's another thing. So many of the off-the-shelf seasonings have salt added. So you add some seasoned salt and garlic salt and some onion salt, and then you throw in some more salt, and it destroys all the nuances in the food, all the neat flavors in the food.
One thing too that and this goes back to my upbringing, I was brought up, and every baby boomer, I think they probably heard this, or they definitely had a friend that heard it. And that is, clean up your plate. There's hungry kids in the world, or words to that effect. And it's just amazing how we can actually, get caught up in stuff like that. So whenever we have, food, you go out to eat, they bring these humongous plates. And I can't eat all of that.
No, yeah.
And it's just nuts. And
often my wife and I will each order maybe an appetizer and a salad.
Yeah.
And I'll have an appetizer. She'll have and we'll have a salad. And yes, it saves you money. we still have to bring some home with us most of the time when we do.
But,
But it also gives you the chance to have a little more variety and try some different things.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Really does. And we've had a pop-up on the screen. Do you see that? I see that. I don't know where it came from, so I've never seen it there before. And I don't know what. We're going to continue to drive on. StreamYard says live viewer comments show up on StreamYard.
Yeah, I don't know if that's just here on the producer side of it, or if the
I'm not either. We're going to drive on because this is not a free account. We pay for this account, and it's tied into E360 TV because that's the way it interfaces into all the branded channels that you watch us on. So we apologize for that. And I don't know what their deal is. And but anyway, when it comes to living a life, your outlook, and I'm going to have Emerson go into this story about the acres of diamonds, but sometimes something can be staring you straight in the face and you can't see it. I'm talking about not only just mentally, I'm talking about physically. Yep. And Emerson, would you share the story of the acres of diamonds? Listen to this, folks.
Well, this is a tiny little book. And I just kind of in our conversation just before we started, thought about it. I think I still have a copy of it, but it's just a tiny little book, and it was written many years ago by actually by a minister, but it's the story of one of the great diamond mines in the world, and a farmer was dissatisfied with his life and has spent a lot of his money and time looking for diamonds, looking for a mine of diamonds. And he ended up losing his farm, which he sold to finance his search for the diamonds. And years later, the person who bought the farm noticed some little glistenings in some black rocks that were scattered around, and in the fence that had been built and everything else with those stones, and scraped on it and realized that the farm had hundreds and hundreds of diamonds right on the farm. This farmer had spent his life, his fortune, and ended up losing his life and everything else in his pursuit of getting rich with diamonds. And they were scattered all around him. So the gist of the story is, going back to the same one with Moses, almost always we have the answers. We have the resources. We have the things around us. If we just step back, open up our eyes to it. And like you were talking about earlier too, Jim, sitting down and just writing out.
Oh, yeah.
Make it a gratitude list if you want, but writing out all of the things that you have, all of the advantage, all of the resources, all of the people that you know, that you can call, all of the knowledge, the experiences you have, all of the different things that you have in your life. Those are the things that when you begin adjusting your life around that abundance instead of around the lack, and you are looking, see, that farmer was surrounded by diamonds.
Yeah.
And he was consumed with finding diamonds.
Poor guy.
And spent his life, his fortune, and everything. And they were around him. He was walking past them. So in our own life, it's up to us. And it's up to us to help our children as well. And our grandchildren to understand what I need isn't something out there. What I need is already right here. It's what I do with it. It's like the old analogy. You don't get to pick the cards you get dealt. It's how
Yeah,
you play your hand that matters.
yeah. You can't pick your relatives, huh?
Well, that's another one. Okay,
Well,
we'll
that's
just
another
leave that
show
one
right
alone,
there.
Jim. Leave that one alone.
Yeah, I hear you. You know, Emerson, when you're talking there, and I want to share this with some of the folks out there in TV land who may not have heard of it, but you tell the story about the micro lending. And I love
Oh, yeah.
this story. This is a classic example of people, specifically ladies. I'm just going to do an overcast here and let overview of it, excuse Shay, and let Emerson fill it in. But these ladies have a lot less than we do. And they just really, embraced the opportunity that came to them. And that's what you need to do. Listen to this story, if you would, please, Emerson.
Well, there was a Dr. Yunus in Bangladesh, I believe, and he actually won the Nobel Prize for this. It's the concept of loaning micro amounts of money, $50, $100, $150, to women in developing countries. Now, these are, in your developing countries, some might say third world, but these are extremely, extremely, extremely poor compared to anything that we know.
Yeah.
They may not have running water. They may not have
electricity.
And often the men go off to other areas, other countries, in many cases, and spend months or years working and sending money home. So it's a whole different culture in life. If you've ever gone on a cruise ship, your average cruise ship has between 60 and 80 countries represented in the workers. And most of them are working 8 to 10 months a year away from their families.
Wow.
So into that environment, Dr. Yunus came up with the idea, if I loan money to women, I'm just going to say it the way it was shared with me, basically. The men, they'll take the money, they'll gamble, they'll use it for liquor or drugs or prostitutes. But the women will take it and they'll buy something that they can use to make a cottage industry. Maybe it's needle, maybe it's thread, maybe it's fabric, maybe it's a cell phone where they can charge their neighbors in for phone calls. Whatever it is, they'll create a little cottage industry. And as that grows, they'll bring in other women. And the money will go to the families. The money will go into the homes. The money will go into the community. And they will enrich the community. They'll change their lives and their kids, their families, their country, the world. Now, why did he loan the money to them? Why didn't he just give it to them? Money, just give them the money.
Yeah. Because
there's no dignity in that.
Amen.
If somebody is in a flood or an earthquake and they need help, give them. That's where charity should be. But what these women wanted was the chance. And when they were loaned the money, this is the amazing part of the story to me. The repayment rate on those little micro loans worldwide is greater than the repayment rate on loans in the United States. We, with everything that we have a higher default rate on loans than these little women because somebody trusted them and believed in them and was willing to invest in them, and they pay them back.
And I think the repayment rate was like 96, 97% on those loans.
It's huge.
And it's huge. And the beauty of that is that, like Emerson said, it gave them an opportunity to have dignity in what they're doing.
Yes.
Because you could look at the United States, ladies and gentlemen, we've had decades and decades of welfare. We've had generations and generations of people born and raised and lived on welfare. And all that does is enslave people.
Yeah.
And they still think that all it does is just inflame the want and the need in their life. They don't have, there's no dignity in cashing a welfare check.
Yeah.
A lot of people growing up that I knew, they were too embarrassed to accept welfare when they were struggling or they were down on their luck, as the saying goes. They just couldn't, they had too much pride or whatever you want to call it. But the fact of it is, these ladies, they paid it back and then they could get it again. And I mean, just think how that made them feel.
No, and they would bring in other women and create whole little cottage industries.
Yeah.
And I've had the pleasure of using some of these, a few different women in their resources in their little businesses. And I learned one of the challenges being in a Western wealthy country is our attitude about poverty and our attitude about wealth. And poverty somehow is seen by so many as a character kind of a thing, laziness and stuff like that. And that's not that in my experience, in most cases, that is not the core of it. It can be a million different things, but in most cases, it's not just because somebody's just naturally lazy. But it's not a character issue. But the other part of it in a wealthy country is we tend to be magnanimous. So one of the very first ones that I ever worked with was a little woman in Pakistan who probably couldn't leave her house without a son or uncle or one of the boys, a male. Okay, but she knew how to work in Excel, and I needed to have a database pulled from some sites on the internet and put together. It was pretty complex, and so I asked her to make a bid on it to tell me how much, and she came up with some odd number like $81.67. And this had like 12,000 entries that had to be made. I wrestled with that. I wanted to say, oh no, that's not enough. I'll pay you at least a couple of $100 to do this or whatever. And I recognized, you know what? She is getting to set a price. And she's setting it with a man.
Right. Ooh.
And to honor that, I need to honor her.
Amen.
And desire. That's the dignity in it. That's the dignity in it.
Yeah. Because if you would have went back and said, oh, that's not enough money. I got to pay you at least $150, $200. You would have insulted her.
It would have been an insult.
Yes.
It would have been a cut. It would have been another man,
putting her down,
man,
putting her
down
down
the nose and thinking that she was dumb or stupid or ignorant or whatever. And she's setting her own price.
Yes.
Dignity in that is so powerful.
Yes. And that's one of the things that we all need to work on, ladies and gentlemen, is my mother used to tell me, if you can't say something nice about someone, don't say anything at all. Yeah. And I'm working on that because I get aggravated at some of the high profile people, let me say, but they have no power over me unless I give it to them. And mom's words are, boy, I still would love to sit down one more time at supper time, as mama used to say, Sonny boy, you make sure you're home for supper time and smell her homemade biscuits. Oh, man. Me talking about mom's homemade biscuits and you talking about walnuts and the syrup at the beginning of the show. I started the show kind of rough. I'll probably end it kind of rough. But the point of it is that we need to understand that everybody, everybody needs love. We're social creatures. We can't live without it. There's no question about that. And we need to love ourselves first so we can love others. We also, as Donna likes to say, give yourself grace.
Yes.
Don't be hard on yourself. And that's so critical too, because
don't lock up your heart from hurt.
Oh yeah, embrace hurt.
So many people, I'll never be hurt again. And what you're doing is really locking your own light from all of the people that you are here to impact and affect.
Yeah, because how many times have you heard people and you've seen people who have overcome great tragedies in their life or great problems, and they use that to light their soul, to share their light with others, and it helps others in their hour of need to overcome tragedy or heartbreak or whatever it might be, because that's a tough thing for all of us to go through when we lose the life of a loved one or something. That's hard.
This is important. You can be vulnerable,
yes,
and not gullible.
Amen.
Vulnerable, not gullible. Gullible.
Yeah.
People, they'll take advantage of it. No, you can be vulnerable. Vulnerable simply meaning I'm an open book. I'm here to share my gifts with you.
Amen. Amen.
Nobody
and together,
can hurt you. Nobody can hurt me.
Yeah. And
we can
together,
only do it ourselves.
Yeah. And together we can make it. That's what friends are for. And your friend and your family member, just like people that just look at them like, okay, we're brother and sister by a different mother. And that's the way we should look at people. And I'm going to close the show simply by saying, we could take a lesson from our dogs. We really can, the family pet. Can you imagine if we had the same kind of a loving heart and forgiving heart that a dog demonstrates 100% of the time and during their life with us? They're blessed. We're just so blessed to have them. Ladies and gentlemen, our time is gone. We'll see you tomorrow. Emerson, thank you so much for being with us. It's always a pleasure. And be sure, ladies and gentlemen, to share our show with others. We're on YouTube, Facebook Live.
Yes.
And, just
spread the word.
Yes, because there's people out there that need to hear this. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye. Take care.